Now it's the next sequel. The previous one was had very low visiting, and it was devoted specifically to the genetic questions, and maybe they sounded too scholastic, and the general public thought that it's not about them. So these questions do not relate to common people, to common people. I will try to show that it is not so, but since I had some films or lectures of bad quality on my Russian site, Alexander Kazankov, but written in Cyrillics, I'll repeat some key questions of my previous talks. And the first talk was about the distribution of the haplogroups of the Y chromosome, male-specific Y chromosome, in the early periods of the Homo sapiens wanderings, when Homo sapiens went out to Africa. And according to the point of view of Stephen Oppenheimer, expressed in the book The Original Eve, it happened around 80,000 years ago, and the way out of Africa was southern. And one can find this scheme in the computer if one types the Stephen Oppenheimer and something Journey of Mankind or something like that. But this is my diagram. So this is Africa, where the people originated. And there we find the most ancient haplogroup, A, which is represented about the so-called Bushmen. Actually, about the one group of them, the most pure genetically Bushmen, Zhonghuansi. And also, this haplogroup is represented somewhere in Africa, in Eastern Africa, in Sudan, for instance, among some people of Sudan. Maybe Ethiopia, but I'm not sure. And the B also, these two haplogroups stayed in Africa. Whereas the next haplogroups, C, D, E, and F, these were people. These haplogroups were represented among the people who left Africa around 80,000 years ago, and they crossed Bab el-Mandeb Strait here and went along the coast of the Arabian Peninsula. Why Oppenheimer thinks so, and many people, and I myself too, because there is an Estonian geneticist, Thomas Kivisild, who proved that by analyzing the distribution of the haplogroups of the mitochondrial chromosome, where the most ancient groups, haplogroups, are concentrated in India, but not here, not in Levant. Whereas archaeologically it's proven that they were Homo sapiens around 100 years ago, or maybe even earlier, but later they disappeared, they died out, or were pushed out by Neanderthals. Otherwise, the most ancient mitochondrial haplogroups would have been situated here among the population which lives in the Near East, but not in India. But actually, the most ancient are represented exactly in India. That is the proof that the way of coming out of Africa was southern. And earlier than the explosion of the Toba volcano on the Sumatra island, which happened 74 years ago. Okay. And so how these people went? Actually, I have another picture, which is done by more elaborately because it was done earlier, but I'll use both of them. What happened? So the the joint precursor of all these four haplogroups moved along with the people along the coast until they reached the narrowest point of the Persian Gulf here. And I suggest that some of them crossed for the second time. They were sort of like to do rafting in the sea, and so they crossed this narrow part of the Gulf. And these were the people, the bearers of the ED haplogroup, and they split. Some of them went this way, and they were, for the sake of shortness, I said they were D haplogroup bearers. And the E haplogroup bearers went backwards, and finally they came to Africa again. They came back to Africa, and Michael Hammer and some other people wrote in papers that E haplogroup originated outside Africa, but it's represented in Africa too. So the only solution for this question, for this problem, is that some people went back to Africa. These were people who went this way. And the people who went this way, around maybe 60 years ago, they reached the mouth of the Indus River, as I said in the previous lecture, and they went upstream the river, but as one who interested in geography may find that the source of the Indus River is in Tibet, and so they reached Tibet, and then they crossed the whole continent of Eurasia, and finally got to Japan, where they became the ancestors of the Ainu people, the original population of Japan. And so the present distribution of the D haplogroup of the Y chromosome is very strange. It's represented among the Andamanese Aboriginals, here, Andamanese. It's represented in Tibet, where it helped, in Tibet, and in Ainu. And the only plausible explanation for such a distribution is that moving of the people of the D haplogroup, bearers of the D haplogroup, along the course of the upstream, along the course of the Indus River. So this is about D and E haplogroup. But the people who didn't cross this narrow part of the Persian Gulf had to go along the coast of Arabian Peninsula in the direction of the mouth of the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. In Arabian it's called Shat el Arab. So here. And here they were the bearers of the CF haplogroup, and some of them went further and became F haplogroup, and some of them went almost the same route as the bearers of the D haplogroup. So they went this way, but later in time, because it took time for them to pass this part of the way, and so they went the same route as D, but maybe 5,000 years later. They went, they passed this mouth, and finally they came to the Malaccan Peninsula, the bearers of the C haplogroup, maybe 55 years ago, and some of them crossed this isthmus, which is called Isthmus Kra, and those who went along the coast continued to went northwards, finally became the ancestors of the Mongolian peoples. And those who didn't cross, they had to go to Australia. And so thus the distribution of the C, very strange distribution of the C haplogroup of the Y chromosome, can be explained because it's attested among the Mongolians and among the Australian Aboriginals. So these people who like to wander, they are beachcombers. They like to cross some peninsulas and narrow parts of the ocean. Okay, and this is all I want. And later I'll tell about this F haplogroup because it gives rise to all the rest of the haplogroups. These are just those of the haplogroups which bear importance for the distribution of the languages on Earth, but they are more numerous. For instance, I'm not interested in the haplogroups. Here I don't have them. Also, well, there are some other haplogroups. I'll just stand and show them. For instance, these T, L, H, F. F star or something like that. Yeah, LT. I don't. They are not important for the distribution of the languages, so I'll just throw them out and retain and keep only those who are important for the language. Now, this is all for the moment for these haplogroups, and I continue to talk about the genetics. In the last film, I told about the gene BAZ1B, which is responsible, which directs the development of the specific male morphology. And this film, for 2 days, was visited only twice, because probably these genetic specifics are too boring. But I must say that they are not so boring for the ordinary people, because this information shows that the world of the Aldous Huxley, which was called the Nightmare World, Brave New World, is just around the corner. Because this gene, I'll say without the specific terms, this gene, BAZ1B, by modifying this gene, making, for instance, a genetic operation on the early stages of development, embryo or a cell, an experimentator can produce a human with the given characteristics. For instance, if the parents want the small chin, they'll have the guy with the small chin, like the man who is shooting me right now, Alexei Monastyrsky. He's the nice guy, handsome. I am not. So I have intermediate. I mean, in short, there is a possibility to have a muscular guy, good sportsman, good sexually, in the sexual intercourse, or more, how we call it, less robust, more female-like human, more talkative, with a less chin, with a round head, globular head, and so on. I forgot the English word to not fragile, but docile. Okay. But the idea is that by operating this gene, we may produce the needed characteristics in the adults or in the children. And this is only the problem of whether the humanity will forbid these operations, or there will be people who, for money, will make them. So this is not just a scholastic question. This question relates to everybody. So I continue about the F haplogroup. How this production of this, the dosing of this gene was perpetuated some regulations. There was a mutation when the complex of the self-domestication syndrome arose in some population. And I state that this should have happened here 50 years ago, within the group, the males of which bared the haplogroup F. And why it happened? Why this self-domestication of pedomorphization, of feminization of the skull happened? Because it happened twice, as I said in the previous lecture, in the South Africa, where there are semi-desert semi-desert ecological areas, and another time in Central Asia, around the glacial maximum, around maybe 25.80 years ago, in the conditions where aggression should have been suppressed by way of reducing the production of testosterone. And this gene ultimately governs the production of testosterone by affecting, slowing the development of the adrenal glands, which produce testosterone. And in its turn, these adrenal glands, they form in this neural crest that is underdeveloped in domesticated animals or in self-domesticated humans. So, what are the ecological conditions here? Stephen Oppenheimer said that only 50 years ago they opened the way to move in this direction. But before that, the people survived that in semi-desert, in the same semi-desert conditions. As you may see now, here there are just desert conditions in the Arabian Peninsula, not in this region, but here. But there are some underwater or hidden wells, water wells, which allow people to survive here. And so these are also semi-desert conditions. If people stayed here, then they must be not purely desert conditions at the time discussed, but semi-desert conditions, but because only in semi-desert conditions hunter-gatherers can survive. So this is where the chin arose as a feature. The whole suite of self-domestication syndrome appeared. In the previous lectures, I pronounced this word wrongly. I said suit, but it's said sweet. Sweet. Okay. Yes. So it's pronounced by the very famous lecturer William Tecumseh Fitch. I tend to mix his name with a finch, but finch is a bird. Okay, and so and here arose the people with global heads, with the additional condition, with additional ability to speak, because the women, they speak better than men, because their development at the actual sensitive periods are not suppressed by testosterone. And so they have global heads, and they are talkative, and they solve better the linguistic problems on average. And so there happened, as one scholar named it, feminization of the skull. Okay. And so as a result, the language arose. So there, the language was invented. Not 100 years ago, 200 years ago, as some people think. Because I think that all the present languages, they by methods, they stem from one language, just one language, and the dating of this proto-language is around 45 or maybe slightly more years ago. By specific linguistic methods, it can be proven, and the first question we must answer is what was before that language. Before that language was the Musi language. which is quite correctly described by Stephen Brown. And those who are interested what is music language may I'll devote a specific lecture to this question. They may find the papers of Stephen Brown, but I may just depict it or mimic it, how it sounded. For instance, I'll pronounce something in music language. Like that. Probably there were 3 consonants, M, R, and maybe K, K. But in all modern languages there are lots of consonants, and I think that the language, the precursor of the all languages that exist now on Earth, was invented by a single woman. I state very briefly. Who was abducted from her band by Neanderthals, and so she gave birth to a Metis boy, and she invented language to talk with him, and this boy later came back to this band. He was expelled from this band by his father, and he killed his father, and thus the Oedipus myth arose. And about this, I wrote a song. I even know their names. This woman, who created language, invented language, about 800 words during the whole of her life. Her name was Sarah, and it meant either spark or sparkle. The name of her son, this illegitimate son, half Neanderthal, was Nara, and he had the same kind of gene for the dopamine receptor as Donald Trump. This gene is called DRD4 with 7 repeats, but that's just again, I'll talk later. And the name of her husband was Kona. Why I am sure about their names? Because I reconstructed them. Because I am occupied, I have been occupied for the last 20 years with reconstructing proto-human language. And I turn to this thing in the time that's rest from me. To reconstruct a proto-human language, you must have a certain methodics. What is my methodics? I happen to study Indonesian language or Malay language in the embassy of Indonesia. Its language is called Bahasa Melayu or Bahasa Indonesia. And I couldn't learn this language, unfortunately. But at least I tried to learn it for 2 years, and at the same time, earlier I tried to learn Estonian and Finnish languages, and also unsuccessfully. But because I tried to learn all these languages, must be something useful in it. I noticed that there is a direct coincidence in meaning and a form between Finnish and Malayan languages, and this word is pronounced suku. Suku means kin, gens, both in Malay and in Finnish. And by the way, in Estonian, this word is pronounced sugu. So it has changed in Estonian, but stayed the same in Malay and Finnish languages. And I must directly say that the ancestors of these languages, Malay and Finnish, diverged about 2,000 kiloyears ago. to know this, one must know the classification, genetic classification of the languages of the world. If one tries to do comparative linguistics, one must realize very well how languages are genetically related to each other. And once I met with Václav Blazek in one conference, and I said that these mega families of the languages, from which all stem from a single language, they are not too many. There are maybe 20. To which Václav Blazek said to me, "I think there are 7. Now I think there are 5." And I may name them, but gradually. First, you probably heard about the Nostratic languages, which include 7 well-known linguistic families: Indo-European, Uralic, Altaic, Dravidian, and Kartvelian. And these families stem from one language, proto-language, which was established by a genial Russian linguist or Soviet linguist, Vladislav Markovich Ilyich in the 60s. His works were not published, and he was killed by a car when he crossed with a dictionary in his hand the circular highway, Moscow highway. And so he initially included Afrasian languages in this superfamily, but later another famous, I say, Russian or Jewish linguist, Sergei Anatolyevich Starostin, excluded these Semitic-Hamitic languages from Nostratic. But instead, he united 3 great families, which are Sino-Caucasian, Nostratic, and Afrasian or Semitic-Hamitic. And they stem from one language, very ancient proto-language, which Starostin called Eurasian, which existed, Nostratic existed about 12 years ago, and this Eurasian existed about 15 years ago. Well, these 2 groups are well known, Nostratic and Semitic-Hamitic or Afrasian, but the Sino-Caucasian was established by Sergei Anatolyevich Starostin, and he included in it the languages of North Caucasus, such like Chechenian, for instance, or Circassian, the languages of China, Sino-Tibetan, and some languages of America. Actually, this mega family was proposed by a famous linguist, Maurice Swadesh, in the 60s, and he called it Dene Basque, because it appeared that both Dene and Atapascan languages belong to this great family. And so this family was originated from a single language 15 years ago, and the other group of linguistic families exists in Southeast Asia. These are Austronesian languages, which can be united with Thai-Kadai languages, Austro-Thai languages, forming some Austro-Thai languages, then Austro-Asiatic linguistic family, and Miao-Yao linguistic family. And now it's established that they stem from a single Austric language. And Pater Wilhelm Schmidt, in the beginning of the 19th century, of the 20th century, proposed this unification on the basis of only 3 words. I would name them, but he proved to be right.